From tombs and temples in Egypt to historical records and biblical cities in Mesopotamia and Palestine, the Bible as a historically correct book was evident as ancient cities and nations mentioned there. Ancient writings from other nations confirmed scripture. Until then, even the city of Babylon had been a legend to many people until they recovered its remains. But Jerusalem had been inhabited since the ark disappeared. Many people had just built new buildings on top of the ancient ones. Thus, the old city became layers of history, one after the other. In 1854, a missionary, James Barclay, was walking along the old walls of Jerusalem. Here he stumbles across the entry to a major cave underneath the old city, full of tunnels and openings. It's been closed off for centuries and it ran the length of 5 city blocks. In 1867, General Sir Charles Warren did the first major excavations in the old city and the mountain the temple once stood on. He discovered shafts and tunnels beneath ground level. In 1873, Charles Clermont-Ganneau, a French Orientalist and archaeologist, discovered a cherub carved on stone inside the cave. Cherubim were commonly used in the ancient times to guard the entry to a sacred town or place. This cherubim had similar features to what was popular in the time the ark disappeared. In 1882, General Gordon, a highly respected officer, traveled in the Middle East, and while looking around in Jerusalem, he was convinced that the traditional place called Golgotha could not be the right place. The northern section of the Temple Mount that was cut off seemed like it fit the biblical description and the ancient layout of the city much better. He started excavations there, but he had to leave to help in a conflict in Sudan, where he died and never got to finish his work. However, he did have time to write a letter to a friend containing a shocking statement. Something had happened that he did not explain. The northern mountain that Gordon identified as Skull Hill was also the location for Jeremiah's cave, where he wrote the Book of Lamentations, the very same book where Jeremiah had said, "God's throne remaineth." Gordon said, "The Ark of the Covenant is there." He also mentioned that other temple furniture could also be found there. A very strange statement, as he never got to finish his excavation. So how had he come to know? Well, the place was left covered up, and General Gordon's letters remained tucked away somewhere safe. About 100 years later, a man by the name of Ronald Wyatt had started praying to God to use him to show the world that the Bible was true. Ron had already been looking into the flood story and investigated the possible remains of Noah's Ark. He was also studying the Israel exodus from Egypt and the location where they could have crossed the sea. Finding several old Egyptian chariot wheels. It was on one of the diving trips he ended up traveling by Jerusalem on his way home. He was walking along the cliff face with a new acquaintance when his hand suddenly went up on his own. And his hand pointed to a place where some debris and trash was lying in front of the cliff. Without understanding why or how, he heard himself say, "There is Jeremiah's grotto, and the Ark of the Covenant is there." Ron was confused at what had happened, as he hadn't had such an experience before. He had not even thought of looking for it. Troubled, he went home trying to study and find out if the ark being there could even be a possibility. He studied the Babylonian siege wall at the time when the ark was last seen. He tried figuring out when it had to have been removed and also the limitations of both the time and the place to hide it. He absolutely saw the possibility that the ark could be hidden beneath somewhere in these tunnel systems. He was convinced that God himself had inspired him to find it. Ronald started excavating with his two sons in the place where his hand had pointed. However, they soon discovered that a large mountain rock made digging downwards difficult. Instead, they started digging a few feet to the right. As they started excavating, he quickly found 3 niches in the cliff face. Ron thought that perhaps they could be niches that were meant to hold signs, coming from the Roman period. After all, Golgotha was close to the main road at the time of Jesus, and this could have been where Jesus was crucified. The well-known quote of Quintilian explains, "Whenever we crucify criminals, very crowded highways are chosen so that many shall see it and may be moved by fear of it, because all punishment does not pertain so much to revenge as to example." The Golgotha location where the Byzantine church was built wasn't by a main highway, but this place was. Could these niches have been used to put signs in that revealed to the people the crimes the criminals had done? He started thinking that this side of the mountain could have been the place where people were crucified. He continued excavating downwards, but the ground underneath was very loose. For this reason, they went back to the original place, hoping that they could dig around the large rock. This time, they discovered that they could excavate down between the cliff and the rock, and that the cliff almost formed a roof as they excavated downwards. While digging downwards, he quickly found what appeared to be a rope hole chiseled into the cliff. He was about to find out what it could have been used for. 38 feet below ground level, they found themselves in what appeared to be a cistern-like structure. It was round with stairs going down into it. Ron wondered if it might have been used to store grain and then later was used as a cistern. He chiseled through the plaster and found a large amount of pottery amongst the dirt and debris used as fill to form the cistern. When he showed these pottery pieces to the antiquities authorities, they examined them and informed Ron that some of them dated all the way back to the Jebusite era. The specimens that were dated to the most recent was from the Roman period. He continued along the cliff face underneath where he had found the niches. Because of the pottery and coins they found, they understood that they were on the Roman level. While digging down, he found many finger bones that confirmed his suspicion that this place was once a place for executions. In addition to crucifixions, stoning was also performed during the Roman Jewish era. Outside the cistern structure that Ron discovered, he found another circular structure on the opposite side. Only a base of the circular structure seemed to be intact. While studying the structure, he found a well-preserved section with a wall and a hewn stone standing horizontally out from the wall in the cliff face. A few feet in front of it, he noticed a square rock that didn't look like a natural shaped rock. He carefully picked it up and found a squarish hole chiseled into the bedrock underneath. Could this have been a cross hole? As he examined this hole and cleared away the dirt around it, he discovered that it had a large crack extending out from it. It appeared that the hole was chiseled into a platform in the bedrock. In front, on a lower level, he found several other cross holes. But he couldn't get the thought out of his head that the one on the platform with the crack extending out from it could have been the hole that held the cross of Christ.